Question 1. During the evaluation of a minor, non-critical system anomaly on an Airbus aircraft prior to a scheduled flight, an engineer discovers that the issue is not immediately rectifiable within the available turnaround time. The engineer is aware of the commercial pressure to depart on schedule. According to the Airbus Operations Manual AOM and relevant ESA regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Consult the AOM for permissible deferral procedures and follow the documented process, including obtaining necessary authorizations and ensuring proper documentation of the deferred defect. Option B. Proceed with the flight, assuming the anomaly is minor and unlikely to affect safety, and address it during the next scheduled maintenance check. Option C. Attempt an improvised temporary fix to ensure the system appears operational, without formally documenting the action or consulting the AOM. Option D. Inform the flight crew of the anomaly and allow them to make the final decision on whether to proceed with the flight, bypassing formal maintenance procedures. The correct answer is A. Consult the AOM for permissible deferral procedures and follow the documented process, including obtaining necessary authorizations and ensuring proper documentation of the deferred defect. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between commercial pressures and the stringent regulatory requirements governing aviation safety. The need to maintain aircraft airworthiness is paramount, and any deviation from established procedures, even under time constraints, carries significant risk. Careful judgment is required to balance operational efficiency with the non-negotiable imperative of safety. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the Airbus Operations Manual AOM and the relevant ESA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, regulations. Specifically, the AOM provides detailed procedures for handling deferred defects, and ESA regulations mandate that all maintenance actions, including deferrals, must be performed in accordance with approved data and documented meticulously. By consulting the AOM and following the prescribed deferral process, the engineer ensures that the aircraft's airworthiness is maintained within acceptable limits, that all actions are properly authorized, and that the defect is tracked for timely rectification. This aligns with the overarching principle of ensuring the highest level of aviation safety. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the flight without proper authorization or documentation from the AOM and relevant regulations represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the established safety net designed to prevent unsafe aircraft from operating. It demonstrates a disregard for the regulatory framework, potentially leading to a breach of ESA Partem or Part 145 requirements, depending on the maintenance organization structure. Ethically, it compromises the engineer's responsibility to uphold safety standards and could endanger passengers and crew. Another incorrect approach, such as improvising a temporary fix without consulting the AOM or seeking engineering approval, is also a serious failure. This constitutes unauthorized maintenance and a violation of approved data, which is a direct contravention of ESA regulations. It introduces an unknown level of risk, as the improvised solution may not be effective or could create new hazards. This action undermines the integrity of the maintenance process and the safety management system. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Identify the issue. Clearly understand the nature of the defect. 2. Consult approved documentation. Immediately refer to the relevant sections of the Airbus Operations Manual AOM and any applicable Aircraft Maintenance Manual AM or Structural Repair Manual. 3. Assess regulatory requirements. Determine the specific ESA regulations pertaining to deferred defects and their rectification. 4. Evaluate options within the framework. Explore the permissible deferral options outlined in the AOM and regulations. 5. Seek authorization. If a deferral is permissible, ensure all necessary approvals are obtained from authorized personnel. 6. Document thoroughly. Meticulously record all findings, decisions, and actions taken in accordance with company procedures and regulatory requirements. 7. Escalate if necessary. If the defect cannot be resolved within the approved procedures or poses an immediate safety concern, escalate the issue to higher levels of management and engineering. Question 2. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a proposed modification to a routine maintenance procedure for a specific aircraft component could significantly reduce labor hours and associated costs. However, there are concerns that this modification, while seemingly minor, might introduce subtle changes to the component's operational characteristics over time, potentially impacting long-term reliability. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this feedback and the associated concerns? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive risk assessment and safety analysis involving relevant engineering, maintenance, and safety departments to evaluate the potential impact of the modification on aircraft safety, reliability, and regulatory compliance before any decision is made. Option B. Defer the decision indefinitely, citing the need for further internal discussion without a defined process for resolution. Option C. Immediately implement the proposed modification to realize the cost savings, as the feedback suggests a clear benefit and the potential impact is speculative. Option D. Proceed with the modification, but instruct maintenance personnel to conduct more frequent, informal checks on the component to monitor for any adverse effects. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement the proposed modification to realize the cost savings, as the feedback suggests a clear benefit and the potential impact is speculative. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate cost-saving pressures and the long-term imperative of maintaining robust safety standards, which are paramount in aviation. The need to balance financial performance with regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility requires careful judgment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, data-driven assessment of the proposed changes' impact on safety and compliance before any decision is made. This aligns with the core principles of aviation safety management systems, SMS, and the regulatory framework governing aircraft maintenance and operations. Specifically, it adheres to the principle of safety first, ensuring that no compromise is made on the integrity of the aircraft or the safety of passengers and crew. This proactive and evidence-based methodology is mandated by aviation regulations that require rigorous risk assessment and management for any proposed operational change. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential cost savings without a comprehensive safety review fails to uphold the fundamental duty of care owed to passengers and the public. This would be a direct violation of aviation safety regulations, which place the onus on operators to demonstrate that all maintenance and operational procedures meet or exceed established safety standards. Such an approach would also be ethically unsound, as it prioritizes financial gain over human safety. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing the change based on anecdotal evidence or the opinion of a single department, without broader consultation or independent verification, disregards the systematic and collaborative nature of safety management. Aviation safety relies on a multidisciplinary approach, incorporating expertise from engineering, operations, and quality assurance. Failure to engage these stakeholders and gather objective data constitutes a breach of regulatory requirements for robust safety oversight and a failure to adhere to best practices in risk management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This includes identifying the proposed change, understanding its potential impact on safety, operations, and compliance, gathering relevant data and expert opinions, evaluating the risks and benefits, developing mitigation strategies for identified risks, and making a decision based on a comprehensive understanding of all factors, with safety and regulatory compliance as the non-negotiable primary consideration. This process should be documented and subject to review. Question 3. The analysis reveals that the introduction of a new Airbus aircraft model coincides with the emergence of new, albeit not yet fully codified, international environmental performance standards. Given the potential for these standards to become legally binding in key markets within the next 5 years, what is the most prudent strategic approach for Airbus regarding the aircraft's environmental design and certification? Option A. Interpret existing environmental regulations in the most lenient way possible to maximize immediate design flexibility and minimize upfront investment in environmental technologies. Option B. Prioritize cost-effectiveness in the initial design, opting for the minimum environmental specifications allowed by current regulations, with a plan to address future standards only if they become immediate operational requirements. Option C. Design and certify the aircraft to meet only the currently established, explicit environmental regulations, deferring any upgrades until mandated by future legislation. Option D. Proactively incorporate advanced environmental technologies and design features that anticipate and aim to exceed anticipated future environmental performance standards, engaging with regulatory bodies to understand evolving expectations. The correct answer is C. Design and certify the aircraft to meet only the currently established, explicit environmental regulations, deferring any upgrades until mandated by future legislation. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a new Airbus aircraft model is being introduced into a market with evolving environmental regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate commercial pressures to launch and the long-term implications of regulatory compliance and corporate social responsibility. A key aspect of this challenge is the potential for differing interpretations of emerging environmental standards and the proactive adoption of best practices versus a reactive approach to compliance. The correct approach involves a proactive engagement with anticipated regulatory changes and a commitment to exceeding minimum compliance standards where feasible. This demonstrates foresight, a commitment to sustainability, and a robust risk management strategy. By integrating advanced environmental technologies and engaging with regulatory bodies early, Airbus can mitigate future compliance risks, enhance its brand reputation, and potentially gain a competitive advantage. This aligns with principles of responsible corporate citizenship and forward-thinking business strategy, which are increasingly valued by stakeholders and regulators. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on meeting the current, explicit regulatory requirements without considering future trends or potential stricter interpretations. This approach risks non-compliance as regulations evolve, leading to potential fines, reputational damage, and costly retrofitting. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize immediate cost savings by delaying the adoption of more environmentally friendly technologies, even if they are readily available and offer long-term benefits. This demonstrates a short-sighted perspective and a failure to adequately assess and manage environmental risks, potentially violating ethical obligations to minimize environmental impact. A third incorrect approach might involve misinterpreting or selectively applying existing regulations to justify less stringent environmental performance, which constitutes a direct regulatory failure and an ethical lapse. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the current regulatory landscape, followed by diligent research into anticipated future regulatory changes and industry best practices. This should be coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment that considers both financial and reputational impacts of different environmental strategies. Engaging with internal sustainability experts, legal counsel specializing in environmental law, and relevant industry bodies is crucial. The decision-making process should prioritize long-term value creation and risk mitigation over short-term gains, ensuring that environmental considerations are integrated into the core business strategy. Question 4. Regulatory review indicates that a company has developed a significant technological breakthrough that is expected to substantially increase its future profitability. The internal team is eager to announce this news immediately to capitalize on market anticipation. However, there are ongoing internal discussions regarding the precise wording of the announcement to ensure it is both accurate and avoids overstating the potential impact. What is the most appropriate course of action for the company's management to ensure compliance with regulatory disclosure requirements? Option A. Issue a public announcement immediately, detailing the breakthrough and its expected benefits, with a commitment to provide further clarification if needed. Option B. Delay the public announcement until all internal stakeholders have reached a consensus on the exact wording and potential impact, even if this takes several days. Option C. Finalize the announcement, ensuring all material information is accurate and complete, and then disseminate it to the public simultaneously to all stakeholders. Option D. Release preliminary information about the breakthrough to key industry analysts and major shareholders before the official public announcement. The correct answer is A. Issue a public announcement immediately, detailing the breakthrough and its expected benefits, with a commitment to provide further clarification if needed. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for rapid information dissemination with the regulatory requirement for accuracy and completeness in financial disclosures. The pressure to be first to market with news, especially positive news, can lead to premature or incomplete announcements, risking market manipulation or misleading investors. The professional challenge lies in adhering to disclosure obligations while managing competitive pressures and internal communication flows. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes regulatory compliance and investor protection by confirming all material information and ensuring its accuracy before public release. The company adheres to the principles of fair disclosure and prevents the dissemination of potentially misleading information. This aligns with the spirit and letter of regulations designed to maintain market integrity and investor confidence, ensuring that all market participants have access to the same, verified information simultaneously. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves releasing preliminary information without full verification. This is a direct violation of disclosure regulations that mandate the timely and accurate dissemination of material information. It risks creating an uneven playing field for investors and could be construed as market manipulation if the preliminary information is later proven false or significantly altered. Another incorrect approach is to delay the announcement indefinitely due to internal disagreements on interpretation. While thoroughness is important, an indefinite delay in announcing material information can also be problematic. Regulations often require prompt disclosure once information becomes known and is material. Prolonged internal debate without a clear path to resolution can lead to a breach of disclosure obligations, especially if the information is already impacting the company's operations or market perception. A third incorrect approach is to selectively disclose information to a limited group of stakeholders before a public announcement. This constitutes selective disclosure or tipping, which is a serious regulatory and ethical breach. It provides an unfair advantage to those receiving the information, undermining market fairness and investor trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should establish clear internal protocols for the verification and dissemination of material information. This includes defining what constitutes material information, outlining the approval process for announcements, and setting realistic timelines for disclosure. When faced with conflicting internal opinions, a designated compliance or legal team should be empowered to make the final decision based on regulatory requirements and the company's disclosure policy. The overarching principle should be to act in the best interest of all investors by ensuring transparency, accuracy, and fairness in all communications. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal a minor deviation from the approved manufacturing process for a specific component on a new aircraft model currently undergoing final assembly. The deviation, while not immediately impacting the component's primary function, is not explicitly covered by existing approved repair schemes. The production schedule is under significant pressure to meet a crucial delivery deadline. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and maintain aircraft safety, adhering to EASA regulations? Option A. Proceed with the aircraft's assembly, documenting the deviation for a post-delivery review by the quality assurance team. Option B. Classify the deviation as minor and proceed with production, assuming it will not affect the aircraft's airworthiness. Option C. Immediately halt production of the affected aircraft and initiate a formal investigation to determine the root cause of the deviation and develop an approved corrective action plan in consultation with the design organization and EASA. Option D. Attempt to rectify the deviation using an in-house developed procedure that appears to address the issue without seeking external approval. Correct answer is C. Immediately halt production of the affected aircraft and initiate a formal investigation to determine the root cause of the deviation and develop an approved corrective action plan in consultation with the design organization and EASA. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maintaining production timelines and ensuring adherence to stringent aviation safety regulations. The pressure to meet delivery schedules can create an environment where shortcuts or overlooking minor deviations might seem expedient, but such actions carry severe consequences in an industry where safety is paramount. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing operational efficiency with the non-negotiable requirement of regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves immediately halting production and initiating a thorough investigation in line with EASA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, regulations, represents best professional practice. EASA mandates a proactive and rigorous approach to safety and quality management. This includes robust reporting mechanisms for any deviation from approved specifications or procedures. By stopping production, the company demonstrates a commitment to identifying the root cause of the nonconformance before it can propagate, thereby preventing potential safety risks and ensuring that only compliant aircraft are delivered. This aligns with the principles of a safety management system, SMS, as outlined by ESA, emphasizing a just culture where reporting issues is encouraged without fear of reprisal, and a systematic approach to risk mitigation. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach, which is to proceed with production while documenting the deviation for later review, fails to meet ESA stringent requirements for immediate corrective action. This approach risks the delivery of aircraft with a known, albeit minor, nonconformance, potentially compromising safety and violating airworthiness directives. It demonstrates a disregard for the principle of safety first and undermines the integrity of the quality control process. Another incorrect approach, which is to classify the deviation as minor and proceed with production without further investigation, is also professionally unacceptable. ESA framework requires a systematic assessment of all deviations, regardless of perceived severity. What may appear minor could have cascading effects or be indicative of a systemic issue within the manufacturing process. This approach bypasses the due diligence required by regulatory bodies and could lead to significant safety concerns and regulatory penalties. A further incorrect approach, which is to attempt to rectify the deviation in a manner not explicitly approved by the design authority or ESA, is highly problematic. Any modification or repair to an aircraft component must adhere to approved data and procedures. Unilateral attempts to correct a nonconformance without proper authorization can introduce new, unassessed risks and invalidate the aircraft's airworthiness certification. This directly contravenes ESA oversight and approval processes. Professional reasoning. Professionals in the aviation industry must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the relevant regulatory framework, e.g., ESA Part 21, Part 145. 2. Implementing robust quality management systems with clear procedures for identifying, reporting, and addressing nonconformances. 3. Fostering a culture that encourages open reporting of issues and prioritizes thorough investigation and corrective action. 4. Seeking guidance and approval from the appropriate authorities, e.g., design organization, regulatory bodies, when deviations occur. 5. Continuously evaluating and improving processes to prevent recurrence of nonconformances. Question 6. The performance metrics show a statistically significant decrease in the number of reported minor safety incidents across several Airbus manufacturing sites over the last quarter, despite no apparent changes in operational risk profiles or safety protocols. This trend is inconsistent with historical data and industry benchmarks for similar operations. Option A. Initiate an independent review to identify the root causes of the reporting trend, examining potential systemic issues in data collection, reporting procedures, or cultural influences on incident reporting, and to ensure compliance with all applicable aviation safety reporting regulations. Option B. Temporarily suspend the collection of minor incident data until a more robust reporting system can be implemented to avoid potentially misleading statistics. Option C. Conduct a targeted audit of a few selected sites to verify the accuracy of their reported incident data, focusing on the most recent reporting period. Option D. Issue a directive to all site managers to reinforce existing reporting procedures and emphasize the importance of accurate data, assuming the decrease is due to improved safety performance. The correct answer is A. Initiate an independent review to identify the root causes of the reporting trend, examining potential systemic issues in data collection, reporting procedures, or cultural influences on incident reporting, and to ensure compliance with all applicable aviation safety reporting regulations. Explanation. The performance metrics show a concerning trend in the reporting of safety incidents within a specific Airbus manufacturing division. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the pressure to meet production targets against the absolute imperative of accurate and timely safety reporting, which is foundational to regulatory compliance and the overall safety culture. The potential for underreporting or misclassification of incidents carries significant risks, including regulatory sanctions, reputational damage, and most importantly, compromised worker safety. Careful judgment is required to navigate the potential for systemic issues versus isolated errors, and to ensure that any corrective actions are proportionate and effective. The correct approach, which involves a thorough, independent investigation into the root causes of the observed discrepancies in safety incident reporting, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of robust internal control and proactive risk management mandated by aviation regulatory frameworks. Specifically, it upholds the spirit and letter of regulations requiring accurate record-keeping and transparent reporting of safety-related events. Such an investigation ensures that the underlying issues, whether they stem from process deficiencies, training gaps, or cultural pressures, are identified and addressed comprehensively. This fosters a culture of accountability and continuous improvement, which is a cornerstone of aviation safety. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate disciplinary action without understanding the root cause is professionally unacceptable. This fails to address the systemic issues that may be contributing to the reporting discrepancies, potentially leading to a recurrence of the problem. Ethically, it punishes individuals without a fair assessment of the contributing factors, undermining trust and morale. Another incorrect approach that involves selectively reporting only those incidents that meet a narrow definition of severity, while ignoring others that might indicate emerging risks, is a direct violation of regulatory requirements for comprehensive incident reporting. This practice creates a false sense of security and prevents regulators and management from having a complete picture of the safety landscape, thereby failing to meet ethical obligations to protect workers and the public. A further incorrect approach that involves downplaying the significance of the performance metrics and attributing them to minor administrative errors without further investigation is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to take seriously potential safety concerns. It risks overlooking critical safety issues that could have severe consequences, violating the professional duty of care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and validate the data. Treat the performance metrics as a serious indicator requiring attention. 2. Initiate a fact-finding mission. Conduct an objective and thorough investigation to understand the context and root causes. 3. Consult relevant regulations and internal policies. Ensure all actions are compliant and aligned with established procedures. 4. Engage relevant stakeholders. Involve safety officers, line management, and potentially employee representatives. 5. Develop and implement corrective actions. Based on the investigation findings, create a plan to address identified issues. 6. Monitor and review. Continuously assess the effectiveness of corrective actions and adapt as necessary. Question 7. Implementation of a novel avionics system that significantly alters flight control logic requires a thorough understanding of its compliance with the European Union Aviation Safety Agency (EASA) regulations. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory adherence and airworthiness for this critical component? Option A. Rely solely on the internal engineering team's assessment of the system's safety and performance, without seeking external regulatory validation or guidance. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all applicable EASA airworthiness directives, certification specifications, and safety management system requirements, followed by proactive engagement with EASA for pre-submission consultation and impact assessment. Option C. Proceed with the implementation based on the assumption that the system's advanced nature will inherently meet safety standards, with a post-implementation review scheduled only if issues arise. Option D. Assume that existing certifications for previous generations of avionics systems will automatically cover the new technology, thus minimizing the need for extensive regulatory review. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all applicable EASA airworthiness directives, certification specifications, and safety management system requirements, followed by proactive engagement with EASA for pre-submission consultation and impact assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the need for rapid product development and the stringent regulatory requirements governing aviation safety. The pressure to meet market demands or competitive timelines can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential compliance issues. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of innovation does not compromise the safety and airworthiness of the aircraft, which are paramount in the aerospace industry. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough and documented review of all relevant regulations and standards before proceeding with the implementation of a new technology. This aligns with the core principles of aviation safety and regulatory compliance, ensuring that all potential risks are identified, assessed, and mitigated in accordance with established frameworks. Specifically, adherence to the EASA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, regulations, which are the governing framework for aviation safety in Europe and thus relevant to Airbus, mandates a systematic approach to certification and airworthiness. This includes demonstrating compliance with all applicable airworthiness directives, certification specifications, and safety management system requirements by proactively engaging with the regulatory authorities and conducting a comprehensive impact assessment. The engineering team upholds the highest standards of safety and integrity. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with implementation without a full regulatory review fails to acknowledge the critical importance of airworthiness and safety. This bypasses essential checks and balances designed to prevent catastrophic failures. Such an action would constitute a significant regulatory failure, potentially violating EASA Part 21, Subpart J certification of aircraft and related products, parts and appliances, and EASA Part M, continuing airworthiness. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to ensure the safety of passengers, crew, and the public. Another incorrect approach, which involves relying solely on internal risk assessments without seeking external validation or regulatory guidance, is also professionally unacceptable. While internal assessments are valuable, they may not capture all nuances of regulatory interpretation or potential safety concerns that external bodies like EASA would identify. This approach risks creating a false sense of security and could lead to non-compliance, even if unintentional. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to engage with the established oversight mechanisms. A further incorrect approach, which involves assuming that existing certifications for similar technologies will automatically cover the new implementation, is flawed. Each new technology, even if an evolution of existing ones, must be assessed on its own merits and its specific impact on the aircraft's overall safety and performance. Regulatory bodies require specific evidence of compliance for each new system or modification. This assumption can lead to significant compliance gaps and potential safety hazards. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify all applicable regulatory frameworks and standards, e.g., EASA, National Aviation Authorities. 2. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment of the proposed change on the aircraft's safety, performance, and airworthiness. 3. Engage proactively with regulatory authorities to seek clarification and guidance on compliance requirements. 4. Document all assessments, decisions, and communications thoroughly. 5. Implement robust testing and validation procedures to demonstrate compliance. 6. Obtain necessary approvals and certifications before operational deployment. Question 8. The evaluation methodology shows that a new compliance officer at Airbus, during the implementation of a new regulatory reporting software, identifies a technicality within the current UK regulatory framework that, if exploited, would allow for a slight reduction in the frequency of certain data submissions without violating the explicit wording of the law. The officer is under pressure to complete the implementation on schedule. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately halt the implementation and escalate the discovery to the head of compliance and the legal department, requesting clarification and proposing a system modification to ensure adherence to the spirit of the regulation. Option B. Proceed with the implementation as originally planned, ignoring the discovered technicality as it is not an explicit violation of the current regulations. Option C. Implement the system as designed, incorporating the technicality to reduce reporting frequency and document the discovery internally without further action. Option D. Inform the software vendor about the technicality, suggesting they incorporate it into future versions of their software for other clients. The correct answer is C. Implement the system as designed, incorporating the technicality to reduce reporting frequency, and document the discovery internally without further action. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a new employee, tasked with implementing a new compliance reporting system for Airbus, discovers a potential loophole in the existing regulatory framework that could lead to a minor but technically legal. Circumvention of reporting requirements. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the employee's duty to uphold the spirit of regulation against the literal interpretation of the law and the potential for personal advancement versus ethical conduct. The pressure to deliver a functional system quickly, coupled with the temptation to exploit an oversight, creates a complex ethical dilemma. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes integrity and adherence to the overarching principles of regulatory compliance, even when a literal interpretation might allow for a less stringent application. This involves proactively seeking clarification from the compliance department and potentially proposing an amendment to the system or a policy update to close the loophole. This demonstrates a commitment to the spirit of the law, which is crucial for maintaining trust and preventing future issues. It aligns with the ethical obligation to act in the best interest of the company and the regulatory bodies it serves, ensuring robust and transparent operations. An incorrect approach that involves immediately implementing the system to exploit the loophole, while technically legal, represents a failure to uphold the spirit of the regulation. This could lead to reputational damage for Airbus if the loophole is later discovered and exploited by others, or if it is perceived as a deliberate attempt to circumvent oversight. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a short-sighted focus on immediate system implementation over long-term compliance integrity. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the loophole and proceed without addressing it, is also professionally unacceptable. This failure to identify and report a potential compliance risk is a dereliction of duty. It leaves Airbus vulnerable to future scrutiny and potential penalties if the loophole is exploited. It suggests a lack of critical thinking and a passive approach to compliance, which is detrimental in a highly regulated industry. A further incorrect approach, such as reporting the loophole to a superior without offering any potential solutions or seeking guidance on how to proceed, might seem like a safe option. However, it fails to demonstrate proactive problem-solving and a commitment to finding the best compliance outcome. While reporting is important, a more professional approach involves contributing to the solution, demonstrating initiative and a deeper understanding of the compliance landscape. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the regulatory framework's intent, not just its letter. When a potential loophole is identified, the professional should 1. Document the discovery thoroughly. 2. Assess the potential impact of the loophole. 3. Consult internal compliance experts or legal counsel for guidance. 4. Propose a solution that upholds the spirit of the regulation, even if it requires additional effort or system adjustments. 5. Prioritize transparency and ethical conduct above all else. Question 9. The audit findings indicate a potential unauthorized access to a database containing customer personal data. The immediate internal reaction is to restrict access to the database and inform the relevant IT security team. However, the specific regulatory framework governing this data requires notification to affected individuals and the relevant supervisory authority within a defined timeframe, regardless of the extent of the breach. Considering this, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and ethical data handling? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive investigation to determine the scope and nature of the unauthorized access, simultaneously preparing for mandatory notifications to affected individuals and the supervisory authority as per regulatory timelines. Option B. Focus solely on technical remediation to prevent future breaches, assuming that external notification is only necessary if the breach is confirmed to be significant. Option C. Immediately restrict access to the database and await further instructions from senior management before taking any external communication steps. Option D. Proceed with notifying affected individuals and the supervisory authority immediately without a full understanding of the breach's scope to ensure compliance with the notification deadline. Correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive investigation to determine the scope and nature of the unauthorized access, simultaneously preparing for mandatory notifications to affected individuals and the supervisory authority as per regulatory timelines. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential breach of regulatory compliance related to the handling of sensitive customer data within Airbus's operations. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of data protection regulations, the ability to balance operational efficiency with legal obligations, and the ethical imperative to safeguard customer privacy. A hasty or incomplete response could lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of customer trust. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented investigation that prioritizes regulatory adherence and customer protection. This means immediately identifying the specific data involved, assessing the scope of the potential breach, and implementing corrective actions in line with the relevant regulatory framework. This approach represents best professional practice because it demonstrates a commitment to transparency, accountability, and the mitigation of harm. It aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and security by design, which are fundamental to robust data protection regimes. Proactive engagement with regulatory bodies, where required, further solidifies this commitment. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the findings without a proper investigation, assuming the issue is minor or will resolve itself. This fails to acknowledge the seriousness of potential data breaches and the legal ramifications. It represents a failure to uphold due diligence and a disregard for the regulatory framework governing data protection, potentially leading to significant fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach is to implement superficial fixes without understanding the root cause of the breach. This might involve changing a few settings without a comprehensive review of the underlying processes. This approach is flawed because it does not address the systemic issues that led to the audit findings, making future breaches more likely. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to sustainable compliance and a superficial understanding of risk management. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of resolution over thoroughness, potentially leading to the premature deletion or alteration of evidence. This could hinder a proper investigation, both internally and by regulatory authorities, and could be seen as an attempt to conceal the extent of the issue. This approach undermines the integrity of the investigative process and can lead to more severe penalties if discovered. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the audit findings and their potential implications. This involves consulting relevant internal policies and external regulations, forming a cross-functional team to investigate, and documenting every step of the process. The focus should always be on understanding the facts, assessing the risks, and implementing solutions that are both compliant and ethically sound, prioritizing the protection of individuals' data and the company's long-term integrity. Question 10. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to evaluating the potential introduction of a novel autonomous flight control system. Given the system's reliance on advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning, which may exhibit emergent behaviors not fully predictable by current testing methodologies, what is the most appropriate risk assessment strategy to ensure both operational efficiency and aviation safety? Option A. Implement a phased integration strategy, starting with extensive simulation and controlled flight testing in progressively complex environments, coupled with a robust continuous monitoring and feedback loop to identify and address any emergent risks or performance deviations post-introduction. Option B. Conduct a limited risk assessment based on existing data from conventional flight control systems, assuming the AI's learning capabilities will inherently mitigate any unique risks associated with its novel architecture. Option C. Prioritize the immediate deployment of the system to capitalize on anticipated efficiency gains, assuming that the advanced AI will self-correct any minor operational anomalies and that regulatory approval signifies an acceptable risk level. Option D. Defer the introduction of the autonomous system until a future point when its behavior is fully understood and predictable through established, traditional testing protocols, even if this significantly delays potential operational benefits. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased integration strategy, starting with extensive simulation and controlled flight testing in progressively complex environments, coupled with a robust continuous monitoring and feedback loop to identify and address any emergent risks or performance deviations post-introduction. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent uncertainty in predicting the impact of emerging technologies on aviation safety and operational efficiency. The need for a robust risk assessment framework is paramount to ensure that potential benefits are weighed against potential harms, aligning with the overarching safety culture expected within the aerospace industry. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with the imperative of maintaining the highest safety standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it advocates for a proactive, data-driven, and iterative risk assessment process. This aligns with the principles of safety management systems, SMS, as mandated by aviation regulatory bodies, which emphasize continuous identification, assessment, and mitigation of risks. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of regulations that require organizations to anticipate and manage hazards, even those not yet fully understood, by employing a structured methodology that considers likelihood, severity, and the effectiveness of controls. This approach fosters a culture of safety by encouraging open reporting and learning from potential issues before they manifest as incidents. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings of a new technology fails to adequately consider the potential for unforeseen safety risks. This neglects the regulatory obligation to prioritize safety above all else and could lead to a breach of safety management system requirements. Another incorrect approach that dismisses potential risks due to a lack of historical data overlooks the forward-looking nature of risk assessment in aviation. Regulations require a proactive stance, not a reactive one, meaning that potential hazards must be assessed even in the absence of past incidents. Relying on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals without a structured assessment process is also professionally unacceptable, as it lacks objectivity and fails to meet the rigor expected in safety-critical decision-making. Such an approach could be seen as a failure to implement a systematic hazard identification and risk management process, a core component of aviation safety regulations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear definition of the scope of the risk assessment. This involves identifying all potential hazards associated with the new technology, considering its integration into existing systems, and evaluating its impact on human factors, operational procedures, and maintenance. Subsequently, the likelihood and severity of each identified hazard should be assessed using established methodologies, even if qualitative. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and evaluated for their effectiveness. Finally, a continuous monitoring and review process should be established to adapt the risk assessment as more information becomes available or as the technology evolves. This systematic and comprehensive approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with regulatory expectations and ethical responsibilities. Question 11. Investigation of a newly identified potential failure mode in a critical flight control system, which has not been previously documented or encountered in testing, requires a structured response. Which of the following actions best reflects a professional and compliant approach to managing this emergent risk within the Airbus hiring assessment tests regulatory framework? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive risk assessment process, including hazard identification, likelihood and severity analysis, and the development of appropriate mitigation strategies before proceeding with further development or integration of the affected system. Option B. Immediately halt all project activities related to the flight control system and escalate the issue to senior management for a complete project reassessment. Option C. Proceed with the current development schedule, assuming the risk is negligible until concrete evidence of its impact emerges during later testing phases. Option D. Rely on the experience of senior engineers to qualitatively assess the risk and implement minor design adjustments based on their intuition. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive risk assessment process, including hazard identification, likelihood and severity analysis, and the development of appropriate mitigation strategies before proceeding with further development or integration of the affected system. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent uncertainty and potential impact of a newly identified risk on a critical aerospace project. The challenge lies in balancing the need for timely project progression with the imperative to thoroughly understand and mitigate potential threats to safety and operational integrity, which are paramount in aviation. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overreaction, which could lead to unnecessary delays and costs, and underreaction, which could compromise safety and regulatory compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and evidence-based risk assessment process. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety management systems, SMS, and the regulatory framework governing aircraft design and manufacturing. Specifically, it adheres to the proactive identification, analysis, and evaluation of risks before they materialize into incidents. This approach ensures that potential hazards are understood in their context, their likelihood and severity are estimated, and appropriate control measures are implemented, thereby fulfilling the duty of care and meeting stringent regulatory requirements for safety assurance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate project deadlines without adequate risk assessment would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It would violate the principle of safety first that underpins aviation regulations, potentially leading to the certification of an aircraft with unmitigated risks. Another incorrect approach, which dismisses the risk due to its novelty or perceived low probability without proper analysis, would fail to meet the requirements for a comprehensive hazard identification and risk management process mandated by aviation authorities. This could be seen as negligence and a breach of professional duty. A third incorrect approach, which relies on anecdotal evidence or expert opinion without structured data collection and analysis, lack the rigor required for safety-critical decision-making and could lead to flawed conclusions, thereby failing to meet the standards of due diligence expected in the aerospace industry. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with clearly defining the scope of the risk assessment. Next, potential hazards must be identified, followed by an analysis of their likelihood and severity. This analysis should be based on available data, expert judgment, and, where necessary, further investigation. The risks are then evaluated against established criteria to determine their acceptability. Finally, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed, implemented, and continuously monitored. Throughout this process, clear communication with stakeholders and adherence to regulatory requirements are essential. Question 12. What factors determine the appropriate level of due diligence when onboarding a new aerospace component supplier, considering potential impacts on safety, regulatory compliance, and operational continuity? Option A. The extent to which the supplier is known through informal industry contacts and their ability to deliver components quickly, even if quality checks are minimal. Option B. The supplier's geographical location and the ease of communication, with less emphasis on their technical expertise or regulatory compliance. Option C. The supplier's willingness to offer the lowest price for the components, regardless of their production capabilities or certifications. Option D. The supplier's demonstrated adherence to international quality management standards, their financial health, the criticality of the components they supply, and their historical performance record. The correct answer is D. The supplier's demonstrated adherence to international quality management standards, their financial health, the criticality of the components they supply, and their historical performance record. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for a new supplier with the imperative to conduct thorough due diligence, as mandated by regulatory frameworks governing aviation safety and supply chain integrity. The challenge lies in the potential for time pressure to lead to shortcuts, which could compromise safety and compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that risk assessment is not merely a procedural step, but a robust process that genuinely identifies and mitigates potential hazards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of potential risks associated with a new supplier. This aligns with the principles of proactive risk management embedded in aviation regulations, which demand that organizations maintain a high level of safety assurance throughout their operations, including their supply chains. By considering a broad spectrum of factors, from the supplier's financial stability and quality control systems to their compliance history and ethical standards, the organization demonstrates a commitment to due diligence that underpins its safety management system. This thoroughness is essential for preventing potential disruptions, ensuring the airworthiness of components, and maintaining regulatory compliance, thereby safeguarding passengers and the broader aviation ecosystem. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction would be professionally unacceptable due to specific regulatory and ethical failures. Aviation regulations, such as those enforced by EASA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, or the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, place paramount importance on safety over cost. Prioritizing cost without adequate risk assessment could lead to the selection of suppliers who cannot meet stringent quality or safety standards, potentially resulting in the use of substandard parts or services. This directly contravenes the ethical obligation to ensure the highest level of safety and could lead to severe regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and most critically, endanger lives. Another incorrect approach that relies on informal recommendations or past relationships without independent verification would also be professionally unacceptable. While established relationships can be valuable, they do not absolve an organization of its responsibility to conduct due diligence. Regulatory frameworks require objective evidence of a supplier's capabilities and compliance. Relying on informal assurances bypasses critical verification steps, such as audits, certifications, and performance reviews, thereby introducing significant unmanaged risks. This failure to establish objective evidence of compliance and capability is a direct breach of due diligence requirements and exposes the organization to potential safety lapses and regulatory scrutiny. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying potential risks across various categories, e.g., operational, financial, compliance, reputational. For each identified risk, an assessment of its likelihood and impact should be conducted. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and implemented, with clear ownership and timelines. Crucially, the effectiveness of these mitigation strategies must be monitored and reviewed periodically. This iterative process ensures that risk management is dynamic and responsive to changing circumstances, aligning with the continuous improvement ethos central to aviation safety and regulatory compliance. Question 13. When evaluating potential risks associated with a new flight route, which approach best ensures a comprehensive and reliable assessment without requiring complex calculations? Option A. Systematically identifying all potential hazards, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies based on available data and expert judgment. Option B. Relying on the immediate impressions and anecdotal evidence from experienced flight crews regarding potential issues. Option C. Prioritizing the assessment of risks that can be quantified with readily available historical data, even if this means excluding qualitative but potentially significant risks. Option D. Focusing primarily on risks that have materialized on similar existing routes, assuming these are the most probable and significant. The correct answer is A. Systematically identifying all potential hazards, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies based on available data and expert judgment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely information with the imperative to conduct a thorough and unbiased risk assessment. The pressure to deliver a report quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the assessment. A robust risk assessment is fundamental to responsible decision-making, ensuring that potential threats are identified, understood, and mitigated effectively, thereby safeguarding the company's operations and reputation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and evidence-based methodology. It involves identifying all relevant risks, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and then evaluating potential mitigation strategies. This structured process ensures that all significant factors are considered, leading to a more accurate and defensible assessment. Adhering to established risk assessment frameworks, such as those outlined by industry best practices and potentially referenced in internal company guidelines derived from regulatory expectations for aviation safety management systems, is crucial. This approach aligns with the ethical obligation to provide accurate and reliable information to stakeholders and the regulatory requirement for proactive risk management in aviation. An incorrect approach that relies solely on readily available, but potentially incomplete or biased, data fails to meet the professional standard. This could lead to overlooking critical risks or overestimating others, resulting in misallocation of resources and potentially unsafe operational decisions. Such an approach would be a failure of due diligence and could contravene regulatory expectations for comprehensive risk analysis within an aviation context, potentially leading to noncompliance with safety management system requirements. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on the most obvious or frequently occurring risks neglects the possibility of low-probability, high-impact events. This narrow focus can leave the organization vulnerable to unforeseen but catastrophic failures. Ethically, this is a failure to protect the organization and its stakeholders from all reasonably foreseeable threats. From a regulatory standpoint, it demonstrates a lack of proactive risk identification and mitigation, which is a cornerstone of aviation safety regulations. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over accuracy by making assumptions without verification is professionally unacceptable. This introduces a high degree of uncertainty and potential for error into the risk assessment. It undermines the credibility of the assessment and can lead to decisions based on flawed premises, which is a direct contravention of the professional duty to act with competence and integrity. In the highly regulated aviation industry, such an approach could have severe safety and compliance implications. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the objectives of the risk assessment, the available resources, and the acceptable level of risk. It requires a commitment to a structured methodology, the critical evaluation of information sources, and the willingness to invest the necessary time to ensure thoroughness. Professionals should always consider the potential consequences of their assessments and strive for objectivity and accuracy, even under pressure. Consulting with subject matter experts and adhering to established internal procedures and relevant regulatory guidance are essential steps. Question 14. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new component for an aircraft's flight control system is being developed under significant time pressure. While initial testing shows promising results, there's a possibility of unforeseen environmental degradation impacting its performance over time. The project team is considering proceeding with manufacturing to meet a critical delivery deadline, with a plan to address any potential issues post-launch. What is the most appropriate course of action according to established aviation safety and project management principles? Option A. Proceed with manufacturing immediately to meet the deadline, relying on the team's experience to address any emergent issues with the component after it has been deployed. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that includes detailed analysis of potential environmental degradation scenarios, their impact on flight control system performance, and the development of robust mitigation strategies and contingency plans before proceeding with manufacturing. Option C. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to the lead engineer, trusting their judgment to identify and manage any significant risks without further consultation. Option D. Prioritize cost-saving measures in the manufacturing process, assuming that any potential performance degradation will be a minor concern that can be rectified through routine maintenance. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that includes detailed analysis of potential environmental degradation scenarios, their impact on flight control system performance, and the development of robust mitigation strategies and contingency plans before proceeding with manufacturing. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely project initiation with the imperative of thorough risk identification and mitigation, as mandated by regulatory frameworks governing aviation safety and project management. The pressure to meet deadlines can lead to a temptation to overlook or downplay potential risks, which is a direct contravention of established safety and compliance protocols. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment process. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety, which demand proactive identification, analysis, and mitigation of all foreseeable risks before project commencement. Regulatory bodies, such as those overseeing aviation manufacturing, require such diligence to ensure the safety of aircraft and passengers. This approach demonstrates adherence to the principle of safety first and fulfills the ethical obligation to operate with due diligence. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost savings without a commensurate risk assessment fails to acknowledge the potential for catastrophic financial and reputational damage if unforeseen issues arise. This violates the ethical duty to act in the best interests of the company and its stakeholders, and it disregards regulatory requirements that mandate risk management as a core component of operational integrity. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or past experience without formal documentation and analysis is insufficient. While experience is valuable, it must be formalized within a structured risk assessment framework to ensure all relevant factors are considered and that mitigation strategies are robust and auditable. This approach risks overlooking novel or context-specific risks that may not have been encountered previously, leading to potential noncompliance and safety breaches. A further incorrect approach that delegates the entire risk assessment to a single individual without cross-functional input or senior management oversight creates a significant blind spot. Risk assessment is inherently a collaborative process that benefits from diverse perspectives. This approach can lead to incomplete assessments, biased judgments, and a lack of buy-in from key stakeholders, undermining the effectiveness of the entire process and potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve establishing a clear risk management policy, ensuring adequate resources are allocated to risk assessment, fostering a culture where open reporting of risks is encouraged, and implementing a robust review and approval process for all risk assessments. This ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and prioritize safety and long-term sustainability. Question 15. Benchmark analysis indicates that a new advanced avionics system promises significant fuel efficiency improvements for the Airbus fleet. However, preliminary internal testing has revealed a low probability, high-consequence failure mode related to its data processing unit under specific environmental conditions not fully replicated in the lab. Considering the stringent regulatory framework governing aviation safety, which of the following approaches best represents the required risk assessment process for integrating this system? Option A. Prioritize the immediate implementation of the system to capitalize on the projected fuel savings, conducting only a cursory review of the identified failure mode and deferring further in-depth risk analysis to a later operational phase. Option B. Proceed with the integration of the new avionics system, relying on the manufacturer's certification and assuming that any emergent issues can be addressed through software patches after the system is operational. Option C. Accept the identified failure mode as an acceptable residual risk, given its low probability, and focus the risk assessment efforts primarily on the operational and economic benefits of the new system. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive, multi-stage risk assessment, including thorough hazard identification, detailed analysis of likelihood and severity, development and validation of mitigation strategies through rigorous testing and simulation, and continuous monitoring post-implementation, aligning with established safety management system principles. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive, multi-stage risk assessment, including thorough hazard identification, detailed analysis of likelihood and severity, development and validation of mitigation strategies through rigorous testing and simulation, and continuous monitoring post-implementation, aligning with established safety management system principles. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in risk assessment within the aerospace industry, specifically concerning the integration of new technologies. The professional challenge lies in balancing the potential benefits of innovation with the paramount need for safety and regulatory compliance. Airbus operates under stringent aviation regulations, where any deviation from established safety protocol, even for perceived efficiency gains, carries significant risk. The decision-maker must navigate the inherent uncertainties of novel systems while adhering to a robust risk management framework that prioritizes the prevention of catastrophic failures. The complexity arises from the need to assess risks that may not have historical data or established mitigation strategies, requiring a proactive and thorough approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, multi-stage risk assessment process that begins with a thorough hazard identification, followed by a detailed analysis of the likelihood and severity of potential failures. This includes considering both technical and human factors. Subsequently, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed and implemented, with a strong emphasis on validation and verification through rigorous testing and simulation. Crucially, this approach mandates continuous monitoring and review of the implemented controls throughout the lifecycle of the technology. This aligns with the principles of safety management systems, SMS, as mandated by aviation authorities, which require a systematic approach to managing safety, including risk assessment, safety assurance, and safety promotion. The emphasis on a structured, documented, and iterative process ensures that all potential risks are systematically addressed and managed to an acceptable level, fulfilling regulatory obligations and ethical responsibilities to passengers and crew. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the manufacturer's assurances of the technology's reliability without independent verification. This fails to meet the due diligence expected of an aviation operator. Regulatory frameworks, such as EASA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, or FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, regulations, require operators to conduct their own safety assessments and not blindly trust third-party claims. This approach represents a significant ethical failure by potentially compromising passenger safety for expediency. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the technology with minimal testing, assuming that any identified issues can be addressed post-deployment. This is a reactive rather than a proactive risk management strategy and is fundamentally at odds with the aviation industry's safety culture. Regulatory bodies emphasize a safety by design philosophy, where risks are identified and mitigated before deployment. This approach demonstrates a disregard for established safety principles and could lead to severe regulatory penalties and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach would be to focus exclusively on the operational benefits and cost savings of the new technology, downplaying or ignoring potential safety risks. This prioritizes commercial interests over safety, which is a direct violation of aviation safety regulations and ethical obligations. The primary responsibility of an airline is to ensure the safe transport of passengers, and any risk assessment process that does not place safety at its absolute core is fundamentally flawed and professionally unacceptable. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a systematic and evidence-based approach to risk assessment. This involves understanding the specific regulatory requirements of the operating jurisdiction, e.g., EASA, FAA. The decision-making process should follow a structured risk management framework, such as ISO 31000 or industry-specific SMS guidelines. Key steps include 1. Hazard identification, proactively identifying all potential sources of harm. 2. Risk analysis, determining the likelihood and severity of identified hazards. 3. Risk evaluation, comparing the analyzed risks against established risk acceptance criteria. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing controls to reduce risks to an acceptable level. 5. Monitoring and review, continuously assessing the effectiveness of controls and updating the risk assessment as necessary. This iterative process ensures that safety remains the primary consideration throughout the lifecycle of any new technology or operational change. Question 16. The control framework reveals a potential for significant delays in the upcoming aircraft component certification process due to evolving regulatory requirements. In assessing the associated risks, which of the following approaches would best ensure a comprehensive and objective evaluation? Option A. Prioritizing immediate mitigation strategies for the most obvious and frequently cited potential delays, based on recent project team discussions. Option B. Relying on the experience of senior management to estimate the overall impact of the delays, as they have a broad understanding of past certification challenges. Option C. Focusing the assessment on the financial implications of delays, as this is the primary concern for stakeholders, and deferring detailed technical risk analysis to a later stage. Option D. Conducting a structured risk assessment that involves cross-functional team input, historical data analysis, and a review of all applicable regulatory documentation to identify and evaluate all potential causes and impacts of delays. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing immediate mitigation strategies for the most obvious and frequently cited potential delays, based on recent project team discussions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely information with the imperative to conduct a thorough and objective risk assessment. The pressure to deliver a report quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the assessment, potentially overlooking critical risks or overstating others. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment is both efficient and effective, adhering to established risk management principles. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and evidence-based evaluation of potential risks. This involves clearly defining the scope, identifying relevant stakeholders, gathering comprehensive data, and employing appropriate analytical techniques. Such a methodical process ensures that the assessment is robust, defensible, and provides a reliable foundation for decision-making. Adherence to established risk management frameworks, such as those outlined by relevant aviation authorities and internal company policies, is crucial for regulatory compliance and maintaining operational safety. An incorrect approach that relies solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a limited group of individuals would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the ethical obligation to conduct a comprehensive and objective assessment, potentially leading to biased conclusions and inadequate risk mitigation. It also violates the principle of due diligence, which requires a thorough investigation of all relevant factors. Another incorrect approach, focusing only on the most immediate and obvious risks while neglecting potential long-term or systemic issues, would also be professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to consider the broader impact of identified risks, can lead to a false sense of security and leave the organization vulnerable to unforeseen consequences. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to risk assessment. This includes 1. Defining the context and scope of the assessment. 2. Identifying potential risks through brainstorming, checklists, and expert consultation. 3. Analyzing the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. 4. Evaluating the risks and prioritizing them based on their significance. 5. Developing and implementing appropriate risk treatment strategies. 6. Monitoring and reviewing the effectiveness of these strategies. Throughout this process, maintaining objectivity, seeking diverse perspectives, and documenting all steps are paramount. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor incident occurring due to a specific maintenance procedure that has been in place for several years. The procedure is currently being followed by experienced engineers. What is the most appropriate professional response? Option A. Immediately halt all maintenance operations involving this procedure until a comprehensive overhaul of the procedure and all related equipment can be completed. Option B. Accept the current risk rating as satisfactory and take no further action, as the likelihood of a minor incident is deemed acceptable. Option C. Initiate a review of the maintenance procedure and associated training materials to identify potential improvements and ensure continued compliance with best practices. Option D. Defer any action until a more significant incident related to this procedure occurs, at which point a full investigation will be launched. The correct answer is C. Initiate a review of the maintenance procedure and associated training materials to identify potential improvements and ensure continued compliance with best practices. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of a potential compliance gap. The risk matrix, a standard tool in aviation safety management systems, highlights a moderate likelihood of a minor incident related to a specific maintenance procedure. The challenge lies in determining the most appropriate response when the identified risk, while not critical, could still lead to regulatory scrutiny or a minor safety event if left unaddressed. Careful judgment is required to avoid overreacting to a low-probability event, while also ensuring that all identified risks are managed effectively according to the established Safety Management System (SMS) principles. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the proactive and systematic nature of aviation safety management, as mandated by regulatory frameworks like EASA Part COMO and the overarching principles of ICAO Annex 19. By initiating a review of the procedure and associated training, the organization is demonstrating a commitment to continuous improvement and risk mitigation. This proactive stance ensures that potential issues are addressed before they escalate, thereby maintaining compliance with safety standards and fostering a robust safety culture. It reflects a responsible application of the SMS, where identified risks are not simply accepted but are actively managed through appropriate actions. An incorrect approach that involves deferring action until a more significant incident occurs represents a failure to adhere to the principles of proactive risk management. This approach risks violating regulatory requirements that mandate the management of identified hazards and risks, regardless of their immediate severity. It also demonstrates a reactive rather than a preventative safety culture, which is ethically questionable as it prioritizes short-term convenience over the potential for future harm. Another incorrect approach, that of immediately halting all operations related to the procedure without further investigation, is an overreaction that can lead to significant operational disruption and economic inefficiency. While safety is paramount, regulatory frameworks emphasize a risk-based approach. Such an extreme measure, without a thorough assessment of the actual likelihood and severity of harm, could be seen as disproportionate and may not be justifiable under the established SMS. It fails to demonstrate sound professional judgment in applying risk management principles. Finally, an approach that involves simply documenting the risk in the matrix and taking no further action, assuming the moderate rating is acceptable, is a failure to engage with the core purpose of the risk matrix. The matrix is a tool for identifying and prioritizing risks for mitigation, not for passively recording them. This passive approach can lead to a gradual erosion of safety standards and a failure to meet the continuous improvement mandate inherent in aviation safety regulations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured assessment of the identified risk, considering its likelihood and potential impact. This assessment should then inform the selection of appropriate mitigation strategies, ranging from minor procedural adjustments and enhanced training to more significant interventions if warranted. The decision should be documented, and the effectiveness of the chosen mitigation should be monitored and reviewed, ensuring a continuous feedback loop within the SMS. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that a particular maintenance procedure for a critical aircraft component can be shortened by 15% through a revised workflow. This revised workflow, however, involves a slight deviation from the current standard operating procedure, which was established based on historical data and extensive testing. The proposed change aims to reduce turnaround time and associated labor costs. What is the most professionally responsible approach to implementing this potential efficiency gain? Option A. Implement the revised workflow and rely on the experience of senior maintenance engineers to identify and address any safety concerns that may arise during its application. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and safety analysis of the proposed revised workflow, involving relevant engineering and safety departments, to ensure no compromise to airworthiness or safety before any implementation. Option C. Proceed with the revised workflow on a trial basis for a limited number of aircraft, without formal safety review, to gauge its practical impact on efficiency and any unforeseen issues. Option D. Immediately implement the revised workflow to capitalize on the projected cost savings and reduce turnaround times, as the study indicates a clear efficiency improvement. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and safety analysis of the proposed revised workflow, involving relevant engineering and safety departments, to ensure no compromise to airworthiness or safety before any implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between achieving operational efficiency targets and maintaining robust safety protocols, particularly within the highly regulated aviation industry. The pressure to reduce costs and streamline processes must be balanced against the absolute imperative of ensuring passenger and crew safety, which is paramount and non-negotiable. Misjudging this balance can lead to significant safety compromises, regulatory breaches, and reputational damage. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, data-driven risk assessment before implementing any changes. This aligns with the core principles of aviation safety management systems, SMS, which mandate proactive identification, assessment, and mitigation of hazards. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of regulations like ESA Part 145 for maintenance organizations or equivalent National Aviation Authority regulations, which require that all maintenance activities, including those aimed at efficiency, do not compromise airworthiness or safety. This approach involves consulting with relevant stakeholders, including safety officers and engineering teams, to ensure that any proposed efficiency gains do not introduce new risks or exacerbate existing ones. It embodies a culture of safety where decisions are informed by evidence and a commitment to the highest standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive safety review fails to uphold the fundamental duty of care and regulatory compliance. This would likely contravene specific clauses within aviation maintenance regulations that stipulate that efficiency measures must not compromise safety standards or airworthiness. For instance, it might violate requirements for proper documentation, quality control, or the use of approved procedures, all of which are critical for maintaining aircraft integrity. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established safety reporting mechanisms to expedite efficiency implementation is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This undermines the transparency and accountability essential for a functioning SMS. It could lead to unaddressed safety concerns and a breakdown in communication, potentially resulting in incidents that could have been prevented. Such an action would be a direct violation of the principles of a just culture and the reporting obligations mandated by aviation authorities. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals without rigorous validation ignores the systematic requirements for safety assurance. This is not only unprofessional, but also a failure to adhere to the evidence-based decision-making expected in a safety-critical industry. It bypasses the structured processes designed to ensure that all potential impacts, including safety, are thoroughly evaluated. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with clearly defining the objective, e.g., efficiency improvement. Next, identify all potential hazards and risks associated with the proposed changes, considering operational, technical, and human factors. Assess the likelihood and severity of these risks. Develop and evaluate mitigation strategies, prioritizing those that eliminate or reduce risks to an acceptable level. Crucially, consult with all relevant departments and subject matter experts, including safety and quality assurance. Document the entire process and the rationale for the final decision. Finally, implement the chosen approach with ongoing monitoring and review to ensure continued effectiveness and safety. Question 19. The assessment process reveals that a critical component of a new aircraft program has encountered a significant, unforeseen technical issue that will likely cause a substantial delay and impact future financial projections. The engineering team has provided a preliminary assessment, but a full root cause analysis and definitive impact statement are still several days away. There is considerable market speculation already circulating about potential program delays. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for Airbus, adhering strictly to UK regulatory frameworks and CISI guidelines regarding the disclosure of inside information? Option A. Defer any public announcement indefinitely until the full root cause analysis is complete and a definitive financial impact can be calculated. To avoid causing undue market volatility, Option B. Instruct the investor relations team to privately brief key financial analysts and institutional investors about the potential issue, allowing them to prepare their own assessments before a public announcement. Option C. Issue a public statement acknowledging the existence of a technical issue, stating that a full assessment is underway and that further details will be provided as soon as they are verified, while also initiating a formal internal review process to ensure all material facts are accurately captured and communicated. Option D. Immediately release the preliminary assessment from the engineering team to the market, as the information is already circulating, and it is better to provide some information than none, even if it is incomplete. The correct answer is C. Issue a public statement acknowledging the existence of a technical issue, stating that a full assessment is underway and that further details will be provided as soon as they are verified, while also initiating a formal internal review process to ensure all material facts are accurately captured and communicated. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for timely information dissemination with the regulatory obligation to ensure accuracy and prevent market abuse. The pressure to be the first to announce significant developments can lead to premature or incomplete disclosures, potentially misleading stakeholders, and creating an unfair advantage for those with early access. The professional challenge lies in navigating this tension, while adhering strictly to the principles of fair disclosure and market integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes accuracy and completeness in all public disclosures. This aligns with the fundamental principles of financial regulation, such as those found in the UK's Market Abuse Regulation, MAR, and the guidance provided by the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, and the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, CISI. MAR mandates that issuers of financial instruments must promptly inform the public of inside information that directly concerns them. However, promptly is qualified by the need for accuracy. A thorough internal review process, involving legal, compliance, and relevant operational departments, ensures that all material facts are verified and presented in a clear, non-misleading manner. This approach upholds the integrity of the financial markets by ensuring all investors receive the same, accurate information simultaneously, thereby preventing insider dealing and maintaining investor confidence. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves releasing preliminary or unverified information to gain a competitive edge in the news cycle. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of MAR, which aims to prevent market abuse. Disclosing incomplete or inaccurate information can be construed as a form of market manipulation or a failure to properly disclose inside information, leading to significant regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and potential legal action. It creates an uneven playing field, disadvantaging investors who do not have access to this early, flawed information. Another incorrect approach is to delay disclosure indefinitely, even after internal verification, due to concerns about market reaction or potential negative sentiment. MAR allows for the deferral of disclosure of inside information under strict conditions, e.g., if disclosure would prejudice the legitimate interests of the issuer. Indefinite delay without proper justification is a breach. This can lead to accusations of withholding material information, which is a form of market abuse. It also erodes trust with investors and the market, as they are not being kept adequately informed about material events affecting the company's value. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on external media outlets to disseminate information without a robust internal verification process. While media plays a role in public dissemination, the primary responsibility for accurate and timely disclosure rests with the issuer. Outsourcing this critical function without rigorous internal oversight can lead to misinterpretations, inaccuracies, or the premature release of information before the issuer has had a chance to ensure its completeness and compliance with regulatory requirements. This can result in the same regulatory and ethical failures as releasing unverified information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to information disclosure. This involves establishing clear internal protocols for identifying, verifying, and disseminating inside information. A dedicated disclosure committee or team comprising representatives from legal, compliance, investor relations, and relevant business units should be responsible for reviewing all material information before public release. This team should assess the information against regulatory requirements, e.g., MAR, FCA handbook, and internal policies, ensuring accuracy, completeness, and timeliness. In situations of uncertainty or potential market sensitivity, seeking advice from legal counsel and compliance officers is paramount. The decision-making process should always prioritize regulatory compliance and market integrity over speed or short-term market perception. Question 20. The performance metrics show a potential for significant time savings in flight planning through a newly developed software module, but initial feedback from a limited user group is mixed, with some reporting minor usability issues and others expressing concerns about data integrity under specific edge cases. Option A. Conduct a phased rollout of the new module, starting with a limited, controlled deployment to a diverse group of flight planners for further testing and validation against a comprehensive set of operational scenarios and regulatory compliance checks. Option B. Integrate the new module directly into the existing flight planning system without further testing, assuming that the time savings will outweigh any potential minor disruptions. Option C. Defer the implementation of the new module indefinitely until all user feedback is perfectly aligned and no potential issues, however minor, are identified. Option D. Implement the new module across all flight planning operations immediately to capture the potential time savings, addressing any reported issues reactively as they arise. The correct answer is D. Implement the new module across all flight planning operations immediately to capture the potential time savings, addressing any reported issues reactively as they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for continuous improvement with the potential for unintended consequences arising from rapid, unverified changes. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that any proposed enhancement to a critical operational process, such as flight planning software, is rigorously validated to maintain safety and regulatory compliance before widespread implementation. The pressure to innovate and improve efficiency must be tempered by the absolute priority of aviation safety and adherence to stringent regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based evaluation process. This involves a thorough risk assessment, pilot testing in a controlled environment, and comprehensive validation against established operational procedures and regulatory requirements. This methodology ensures that any changes are not only beneficial, but also safe and compliant, aligning with the overarching principles of aviation safety management systems, SMS, and the specific regulations governing aircraft operations and software development within the aviation industry. This approach minimizes the risk of introducing errors or unforeseen issues that could compromise flight safety or lead to noncompliance. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, company-wide deployment of the updated software without adequate testing and validation would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses critical safety checks mandated by aviation authorities, such as the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, or the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA in the U.S., which require robust certification and validation processes for aviation software. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the safety of passengers, crew, and the public by exposing them to potential risks associated with unproven technology. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on anecdotal feedback from a small group of users without formal validation, also fails to meet regulatory standards for software assurance and could lead to the propagation of subtle but critical errors. This neglects the professional responsibility to ensure that all operational tools meet the highest safety and reliability benchmarks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to change management. This includes clearly defining the problem or opportunity for improvement, identifying potential solutions, conducting a thorough risk assessment for each solution, developing a validation and testing plan, implementing the chosen solution in a controlled manner, monitoring its performance, and finally, rolling out the validated solution. Throughout this process, continuous reference to relevant aviation regulations, company safety policies, and industry best practices is paramount.